Thank you for joining the first Flox Monthly. The idea with Flox Monthly is we want to do a regular, recorded, interactive technical information sharing session for users of Flox. So we're planning to do this every month. This is the first one. We're going to do them at the end of the month, during every month. And each time we're going to have a kind of similar agenda, introductions if people want to say hello. And then we're going to review the recent releases and talk a little bit about what just went out the door. We're going to do a deep dive on some topic of Flox engineering interest, and then we're going to do a Q&A. So really quickly, introductions. I'll turn off the screen share just so we can all kind of see each other, but introductions. So hello, everybody. I'm Ross Turk. I'm head of marketing at Flox. I'm sorry about that. I'm also managing to still be a fairly okay guy, even though that's my role. I do all kinds of words and pictures and things for Flox, and I've also been user number one since the earliest releases, and engineering can tell you I file annoying bugs. Um,
I disagree with the annoying part, but
okay, well, Joe, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So I'm part of Rost's team and I work in marketing. I lead integrated campaigns and super happy about this first meetup. Great to be here. Thank
Cool. And then I'll pick on Steve. Um,
Sure, I'm Steve. I write a lot of the stuff. I call myself a staff writer. If you see me screaming with the mute thing on the video here, it's because Claude Code has done something really bad in the background, which it kind of always does. So just kind of look past that.
yeah, Steve writes all of our blog posts. And so if you've ever read a blog post on the Flox blog, it came from Steve and he derived all the examples and everything. Okay, moving swiftly along, let's catch the rest of the Flox folks and then we'll open the floor for anybody else who wants to introduce themselves. Bill.
Yeah, I'm Bill Levine, engineer at Flox. Do a lot of stuff with the catalog services and things like that. So if you get annoyed with that, I'm the one to blame.
Cool. Zach.
hey, I'm Zach. I been at Flox for 2 years and change at this point. I work on the CLI mostly, but yeah.
Awesome. Robin.
Yeah, I've been with Flox for several years, and I'm in the operations department, mostly dealing with project management type items.
Excellent. Catherine.
Hey guys, I'm Catherine. I'm based in New York and I've been here a couple of years also on the operations team, but more on the recruiting and people side of the house.
Cool. Brendan.
I'm just unmuting. I was just eating lunch, Ross. You busted me. Late lunch. Yeah, Brendan McGee. I mainly work on Floxa, which if you haven't used it, please start using it. That'd be awesome. No, I'm based in London. Don't let the accent fool you.
Awesome. And then Jeremy, and I think that's the last of the Flox folks. Jeremy.
Sure. Jeremy Hogan. This is day 5 for me at Flox, so I know everything about everything. Not really.
Cool. And then I'll open the floor to anybody who wants to introduce themselves, meet the Flox team, talk about maybe if you have a particular interest, why you're here, anything like that. So I'll open the floor.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ernst. Worked at DeepL before and working at Dr. Lib now. I'm in Berlin, just here to find out more about Flox. I looked into it. It's a nice way to use Nix. I'm very interested in the fact that you can reduce a Docker image or build a Docker image using it. Yeah.
Excellent. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, hello. I was Shane. I was working on the FreeBSD with the mixing of Nix. I just came across Flox before, 2 weeks before, and some of the guys working, my colleagues are just so interested in how Flox can be implemented in the CI/CD pipelines and the packages. So I have some questions. Thank you for introducing this nice tool because it's enriching the user space in our Nix community through our areas. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Welcome.
I'm Jono here, in the San Francisco area. I've been using Flox for a year or two. I'm a developer. I use it every day just as a developer for my regular work.
Awesome. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
My name's Soren or Søren. I'm down in Tokyo. I used Flox for personal stuff for a while, and then I just onboarded to a new company today, and was really excited because they're using Flox for, or they have a experimental setup for Flox for the project, and it like made my life so much easier.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's continue. Thank you all for joining us. It's really cool. Appreciate you being here for the first one. This is the founding group, so I really appreciate you being here. Quickly, I wanted to talk about the recent Flox releases. So when we do this every month, I want to spend a little bit of time and talk about the releases that happened that month. And that way we have a nice video asset that describes them, which is good for people who can't make it. In Flox 1.6.0, this happened a little more than a month ago. Big release. This is when we first were able to do package definition via Nix expressions and files via, like within that .flox directory. So we did the manifest builds in Flox 1.5, which allows you to put your build instructions into your TOML manifest. This allows you to put them as Nix expressions in separate files, which is really, really, really cool. And you can even do things like have one build output defined as a Nix expression and then have a manifest TOML build output like consume it and do like multi-stage builds. And so really, really, really powerful stuff. We want to figure out like, we want to see how you use it because it's a very powerful, very open-ended feature. So we want to see how people use it. Also, a ton of ergonomic improvements and bug fixes that went out following 1.5.01 and 1.5.1. So if you look at the release notes for 1.6.0, you'll see a lot of, output tweaks and bug fixes and things like that on manifest builds. We also upgraded Nix to 228.3 and process compose to 164.1. So Flox 1.6.0 had a bunch of stuff in it, but largely it was that Nix expression build capability. In 1.6.1, this was a patch release. There was a fix for probably the most interesting fix was a fix for when profile scripts would have multiple runs, when you would have environments that layered on top of default environments. There is a lot of complexity around environment layering and a lot of complexity around default environments. And I'll just go ahead and say we can expect to refactor this for a while as we encounter new situations and new cases. It's a pretty complex thing. And so we've already got a couple of refactor ideas in mind. So I imagine that the activation code path is going to remain pretty dynamic for a while. We also in 1.6.1 added a bunch of improved output. We suppressed a bunch of unneeded errors, did some better help text, so a bunch of like quality of life stuff. And actually in 1.6.1, we added a new Flox exit command that, to be honest, right now it tells you hold down control and hit D, because that's how you exit a Flox environment is you exit the subshell. But people sometimes weren't able to intuit that. So we added a Flox exit command, which is like, hey, exit your subshell. It might do something better than that in the future, but that was a missing piece of the UI. Flox 1.7.0 and 1.7.1, also big news here. Generations. So first thing to note, 1.7.0 never completed the release process. During the release process in CI, we noticed there were some failures. I forget exactly what happened. If you're interested, I think Zach probably knows. And so 1.7.0 never got released. We killed that before it got done, fixed the bug, and released 1.7.1 right away, same day. And so that contains generations, which allows you to roll back to a previous version of an environment on Flox Hub and kind of dance between all those different environments. The environment has to be on Flox Hub for you to be able to roll back and forward through generations. A bunch of other fixes also in this, including handling of special characters in environment names. Yarn does better things when you run it with Flox and it auto setup. And that sort of thing. Another thing to note here is that environments created with Flox versions greater than 1.7.0 might not be backward compatible because of some changes that we made. So that's a review of the releases. Definitely see the release notes for more details because there's a bunch of stuff that I didn't cover here, and they're usually pretty detailed. And fear not the upgrade. All right, so now I'd like to turn it over to Zach to do a deep dive into service management. Really quickly, show of hands, how many people use service management in Flox? Yeah, good, excellent. All right, well, this will be a good deep dive for you. Thank you, Zach, take it away.
All right, let's get things up and running here. Get the screen sharing figured out. My mouse has disappeared. Okay, can everybody see the title slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Yeah, so today we're going to talk about services. This is so this feature and then one that we call composition. I was like either co-lead or lead on these two features, so I know where all the bodies are buried. So when Ross says that he's filing quote unquote annoying issues, what he means is that he's telling us where we wrote bugs. So let's get into it. So why would you add services to a developer environment? This is hopefully pretty obvious, but generally you want something running in the background while you do other things. That could be, well, we'll get into some examples in a second, but you also might just need some long-running background programs that are like necessary for your development, not just nice to have. So examples, say that you're working on a website, like a documentation site or like the front end of a web app, that kind of thing. You might want a server that's doing like a live preview of that. Another example is you might have a test runner that watches for changes to your source files and then reruns your tests every time something changes. That's another common use case. And then this last case is kind of the one that I was talking about on the previous slide, where in order to do your work, you need like some other things running, say like a database, a caching layer via like Redis or something like that. So there's a lot of motivating use cases for a feature like this. So why would you use Flox? Well, let's look at some of the kind of like pre-existing solutions for this. First one I'll talk about is proc files. These are kind of a format made popular by Heroku, which this is kind of like from the 2010s era, which in terms of technology means that it's ancient and by definition inferior. Obviously kidding, but so tools that you'd use for this are things like Foreman, Overmind, and HiveMind. And kind of the way this looks is it's just you get kind of like one service per line in this file, and you give it a name, colon, and then command, and that's pretty much it. So the pro there is that it's pretty simple. You kind of just give it a name and a command. The downside is that there's kind of no real dependency management at all. So you just have to know that those programs that are being run by your service are available somehow. There's also no startup order, at least last time I checked. I don't use these very much. I have used them before, but I'm not an expert in. I've used, I think, Overmind. The other thing is that this is a separate file from whatever else sets up your developer environment. So it'd be nice if it was kind of all packaged together because it is kind of an integral part of your developer experience. And then the next thing is that if one of those services takes some kind of like complicated setup, it's the simple syntax makes that kind of painful. The next thing we'll talk about is Docker Compose. So this is a step up in some ways and a step down in others. So the thing that I appreciate most about this is the ability to reuse like pre-existing or pre-configured service definitions, that being like an existing Docker image, for example. So that's really nice. That means that, you know, whatever dependencies those services need, they come along with it. Any environment variables that they need set, already baked in, that kind of thing. The downside is that it's YAML. I don't need to explain that. The next one is if you have more than one service that needs to communicate together, setting up port mappings, mounts, kind of like a shared network, yada, yada, yada. That's like kind of complicated for like, I just want to run a couple of things. So that's not my favorite thing in the world to do. But it is also still defined separately from your developer environment. Another pro that I'd put in this column is that the actual command line tool for like starting, stopping, seeing statuses and stuff like that, that is pretty nice. I forgot to include that on the slide, but yeah, so the step down is that it's kind of more complicated, in my opinion, than it really needs to be. Which brings us to Flox services. So the upside here is that the dependencies for your services are managed just like any other dependency for your developer environment. It's also one file for the entire thing. Your services are defined in the same manifest.toml that all your dependencies and stuff like that are. The next thing is that because these are just processes, it means that there's no port mapping, mounting, anything like that. You kind of just say run and it runs. This also means that you can inspect these things while they're running a little bit easier. So if something isn't acting quite right, you can kind of point any tool that you want at the service because it's just another process running on your machine. And again, it's not YAML, so that's a huge plus. Some of the cons, there's no like way to set a startup order or define health checks right now. Those are things that are on the roadmap that we just haven't gotten to yet. But yeah, so what does it look like to add a service? So this is kind of the general syntax. You have a services section in your manifest, and then you say services dot name of the service that you want, and then you give it a command, which is just a script. So that's pretty straightforward. By using programs that are from your environment, you know that any dependencies that you use in this command are going to be provided to anybody who consumes it. Let's see. So if we see a concrete example, services.myawesomeservice, and this just prints out the date every 5 seconds. So it makes the simple things easy and it makes the complex things possible. So if we get into a little bit more detail about what you can do in these services, one thing you can do is you can reference environment variables that are set on your environment. Yeah. So for instance, if I define a name variable here, I can reference it down in my command. And this will just say, what's it called? GIF, not GIF, which is correct. You can also reference environment variables that are exported by your onActivate hook. So that will do pretty much the same thing. And then you can also set variables that are service specific. So you can say services.what's it called. There's a vars field that you can say, that you can specify. And name will set an environment variable just for the service. And the awesome part is these even work now. So this was in the original services release, and apparently they just didn't work for a long time, and I had no idea until, and apparently Ross and Steve both did. And so there's like a communications issue where like this didn't work really at all. And so to kind of explain why that is, well, actually, let's get into that later when I talk about kind of how this works under the hood. Yeah, there's kind of a name collision on vars. We'll get to that. You can also run a service that spawns a daemon. So in this case, there's a little bit of extra setup. You have to tell us that it's going to spawn a daemon. And then you also have to tell us a command to run to shut it down. So the reason for this is that normally service managers can track the status of the services that they spawn because they are like direct children of the process that has started them. But when you spawn a daemon, it is kind of by definition no longer a direct child of the thing that created it. And so that makes tracking its status difficult. So for instance, if you have a daemon and you don't specify these, what you'll see is the status will say that it's completed, which means that the thing that spawned the daemon, which is supposed to be short-lived because its whole purpose is just to start the daemon, that process has exited, which is true. But it's also not the thing that you care about. You care about the daemon. So we have these two fields here for kind of making sure that we do our bookkeeping correctly. So we have a few commands for interacting with these. It's start, stop, and restart. Not given an argument, it will operate on all the services. Given an argument, it will operate on just those services. You can see the status. So like I said before, if you run Flox services status, you get the service name, its status, and its PID. As I mentioned before, this will say completed if the process has exited. You can also see this in JSON format. So if you want to do some scripting, that's there to help you out. You can also see logs. So Flox services logs -f, and this will just print it's basically like tail -f. It will just show you a running list of the logs from each service. So let's see a live demo now. So I will come over to my terminal. And let me resize this a little bit. Going to switch back to the main branch because I was working on something that was a little broken. So I'm going to say Flox activate -- start services. And so this is kind of demonstrating a new flag, or a flag that it might be new to you if you haven't used services, which is this -- start services flag. And so all that does is starts your services as part of activating. So let's see how things are doing. Completed. Let's do a git fetch. Make sure I'm on the right branch. Exit and try that again. Again, things were in an intermediate state. Oh boy. Okay, so let's see what's going on. This is actually a good, it's good that I've run into this so we can see how to debug things. Ah, that's not released yet. That'll be released on Tuesday. So, So there's a bunch of stuff that is basically not, this is building the docs site. And I was working on something that has a bunch of broken links. And so this is saying, absolutely not. I will not build that for you with broken links. So it's not the service that's broken, it's my docs site. But we can still kind of see how this works in action. So like I said, I have a service that's kind of like not working properly. So I go to see the logs. First, I went to see the status and it said completed. And so this part here in the parentheses is the exit status. So if I see a 1 there, that means that it is broken. Something didn't work properly. The square brackets tell me what the PID was when it was running. So that's nice to have. So you can kind of, we leave you some breadcrumbs if you want to do some investigation on your own. So we're going to leave that alone for now because that's clearly not working. Instead, we're going to go to a small example. So I have 2 here. Let's see, what's it called? So I'm going to Flox edit so you can see my service definition. So I have, this is kind of the same thing that I showed you earlier. While true, echo a name, sleep for 5 seconds, and then we're done. So Flox activate -s is a shorthand for the start services flag. And we see that this will run every 5 seconds. And this one is working because I didn't break it before before the call. Cool. Flox services status. See that it's running, tells me the PID. All cool. And then the nice thing is that when I hit Control D to exit this, it will stop that service automatically. And we'll get into that now. So let's go back to the presentation. And I will tell Zoom, where is Zoom? Come on, Zoom. Yeah, here we go. Screen juggling is a skill that must be practiced, and I have not done that. So now we move on. The next thing you can do is, this is kind of another feature that I mentioned earlier. The composition feature basically allows you to create environments that you can use as reusable building blocks. And then you can include those into another environment. And so that means that you can build up a developer environment or an environment for any other purpose by basically from reusable building blocks. And that's really cool. The way this works is that I'll show you the syntax, but essentially what you do is you say, I depend on that environment, I depend on that environment. This could be a remote one on Flox Hub. It could be a local one specified via its path on the file system. And then when we build your environment, we merge those manifests together. And so what this does, and the way that this is different from, say, layering environments, is that this gives you one environment, whereas layering is literally multiple environments that are active at the same time. So the way this looks is we have this include section in your manifest. And so you say include, give it a list of environments. I have one for building a Rust project, one for some other like local development things. You can specify a path. And so relevant to this discussion is one of those environments could define a service. And so what this means is that you define some environments that run your services. And then when you want to kind of bootstrap a new project that depends on that service, you just include it. So if I want a project that needs Redis, this is all that's necessary to get me up and running. And so that's really nice. Basically, it's like one line, and I have a whole reproducibly built and defined like Redis service for any project that I want. And I didn't have to do really any work for that. Ignore the fact that it has my name on this. I did have to do that, but imagine I didn't. So more screen juggling. We'll come back to my terminal. Okay, so let's clear the screen. So real quick, let's see what the manifest looks like. So this is pretty much what I had earlier. I have include environments and then a Redis environment that I'm bringing in. And so this is what we call the including manifest. This is the manifest that you wrote. So if I want to see what the manifest looks like that actually got built after the whole merging process, I say flox list -c. I'm going to pipe that to my editor. And you can see, let me turn on syntax highlighting. You can see that there's a lot more stuff in here. This is basically all from that Redis environment. It got merged in here. So we have on activate hook for setting some environment variables. And then we have the service command that just runs the Redis server. So this is all the stuff that got built, but I didn't have to build it. And that's really nice as a person consuming it. And so you can imagine doing this for, Postgres as well, yada, yada, yada. So let's move on. Juggling screens once again. Da, 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 da. Where's my mouse? There we go. Cool. So now we get into the under the hood portion, which is my favorite part because like I said, I know where the bodies are buried. So under the hood, to actually run and kind of manage these services, we use a program called Process Compose. So this does it actually like starts the processes, reports their status, stuff like that. And so what we do, let me back up and say the reason we use this rather than writing something ourselves is that this was kind of the shortest path from A to B, like no services to services. We kind of debated using a few different programs. So like another one that we considered at the time was Supervisor D. And the reason we chose Process Compose at the time is that Process Compose has built-in support for health checks and startup order based on health checks. We haven't built that out yet, but not having to build it out ourselves was attractive enough that we chose to go this route. And so the way this works is your services in the services section of your manifest actually get translated to a Process Compose config file. And you can see this in your environment if you activate environment, type floxenv, this points to .flox run. It's like system.environmentname.say dev in this case. That's a symlink to your whole built environment. And then inside of there is a file called serviceconfig.yaml. And so if you peek at that, you'll see kind of what do we generate as a config file. And let's see, yeah, I don't have an example of that here, but there's a few things to mention about that. So one is that we actually create a process called Flox Never Exit. Because when we started doing this, process compose, whenever your other services exited, whether that was by error or not, it would shut itself down. And so that means that once everything has shut down, if you want to know the statuses because you don't know that they've shut down, it gives you an error and can't tell you the statuses of things. And so it makes it hard to figure out, what the heck just happened if you go to make a request to your web server and it's not there anymore. So we add this process in there that never exits. It's literally like a sleep infinity, which is in itself a fun story because that's how we found out that sleep infinity is not supported on Mac OS, I believe. So it's kind of an example that I bring up when people ask, like, well, how important is reproducibility really? And I say, well, something as dumb as like the sleep command has different behavior on different platforms or depending on where you get it from. So we use core utils for that now, so that we know that the infinity kind of argument is available. Anyway, so we had that process in so that process compose is always running while you have services running. So that we can always query the status and either start or restart services without having to bring up process compose from the ground up again. Which brings us to automatic cleanup. Not end. I have one more screen juggling, but this one is the last one, I promise. So so we have the sequence diagram here. Let me do like this. It's probably going to make it bigger for you guys. So this is kind of what it looks like when you do a Flox activate that starts services. So the first thing that happens is you're in your terminal tab, you type Flox activate, and that process talks to what I'm going to call activation state here. There's a couple of different things that happen there, but this is kind of a simplification that will make sense here. So we write some state out, then we start this thing called Flox watchdog. Previously, this was called Klaus, named after one of our coworkers' French bulldogs. But that was too much whimsy for some people. So we called it Flox Watchdog instead. So I'll explain what this does in a second. After we start the watchdog, we then start process compose. And so then what this watchdog does is its whole purpose is to basically watch how many activations for a given environment you have and track whether they're still running or not. And so it does that by basically polling the status of this activation state. So it reads, this contains like a list of PIDs for your running activations, among many other things. And basically what this does is says, what's the current list of PIDs I need to watch? And then it goes and kind of queries whether those PIDs are still running. And so it's going to keep doing that until you hit Control D in your activation, at which point it will see that it's no longer running and it will tell process compose time to die. And so it talks to process compose via a socket. This is how we communicate with process compose in the CLI as well. And so there's a bunch of complexity there about what happens if talking to process compose via the socket doesn't work. Does it mean that process compose died? Does it just mean that there was an error talking to process compose and we should just try again? Yeah, so it's pretty tricky. I'd say that like Flox services, aside from activation, is one of the more complicated parts of the CLI. And part of it is that, there's this whole component that we don't control. Process compose has actually improved a lot since we started using it. But in the beginning, it gave us a lot of trouble, like brought our CI to its knees multiple times. But yeah, so that's where I will leave things. I will now open the floor up to questions, because otherwise I will fill whatever time is given to me. Let me see Steve's question over here. If you want to get something like orchestrating the service start order, could you stagger them sequentially and include? So currently the start order, like Ross says, is alphabetical, but that's purely by accident. That's just the way that Process Compose does it. One way that you can do this that is kind of hairy is you can have services that like create a named pipe on your file system via like make FIFO. And you can have one write to it when it's ready and then another one block on it waiting to read from that socket. This is like, it's not fun. It's pretty hacked together, but that's just because we don't have this health checks thing set up yet. But yeah. Any other questions? Because I think we have to go soon-ish. Ross, am I wrong?
I think we're scheduled for the whole hour.
Oh, okay, cool.
But yeah, what Zach is talking about is our daily stand-up starts in 6 minutes, but this supersedes our daily stand-up, I would say.
Cool.
So yeah, first, any questions on service management, and then we can kind of open the room for questions about Flox things broadly. We have a pretty good set of Flox engineers here on the phone, so I called it a phone. I keep doing that. I don't know. As I get older, I keep calling things that aren't phones. Okay. So yeah, any other questions on service management? Awesome. Thank you, Zach. Appreciate the deep dive. If there are topics that you all want to see in the future, a deep dive on, let us know in Slack. We'll figure out the right engineer to dive into them. If you have feedback on whether it was too deep or not deep enough or whatever, also happy to hear that now. Happy to hear it on Slack. If you want like code deep dives level, we can do that. So, you have an opportunity to influence the future of these events. So let us know what y'all think. And then I'd like to open it right now for any questions, anything at all.
Hello, Rosa. I have a doubt. Like, last month I have spoke about Flox and our FOSS meetup. There are some couple of engineers from TGS and Zoho Corp. There are some solution architects. They have doubt like if you are using Flox in our SDLC, if you are, some packages have some issues like some npm package, node packages have some 0-day vulnerability. Does Flox will give them alert or not? Because they are now using Red Hat's and Ubuntu's Canonical Ubuntu's binary package services. Does Flox will give them alert to change? Does this package has some vulnerabilities over in this pack is binary? You can change to the older versions. Does Flox has that support or not?
Ross, you're muted.
So to clarify the question, so support for CVE notifications on environments, is that kind of what you mean? Like like notification of new CVEs against packages that are in your environment?
Yeah. It's about that thing.
Yeah, that's not something that we have right now. It's something we talk about a lot. It's something that we want to work on. I think we are looking at sort of SBOM stuff and then looking at CVE mapping against that. Definitely something that we're looking at. I don't have a timeline, unfortunately, right now. Does anyone,
Bill.
anyone else on the Flox side? Oh, Bill. Yeah.
So in Nix, there is a native flag, insecure, which is community maintained on packages. And by default, we will not give you any package that is flagged as insecure by the Nix community.
Yeah.
There's a lag to that, so I wouldn't necessarily say that it's, we're reporting on CVEs and like you can rely on notifications to be secure. But that's one thing that is kind of baked in right now. If you want insecure packages, there's an option in the manifest to enable that. But as Ross said, I think we have lots of ideas of things that we'd like to get in. Just not with here.
Yeah, because one of the guy is tried on the testing servers, which is an on-prem. When he's trying to use install Flox and he was setting and doing some packaging stuff, one of the SOAR tools or SIM tools, I think, that just raised a flag over there. Like some of the packages have been night labeled, but it is not tested. So they have some questions over there. Like if you're using in our pipelines and if you're using in our K8 services, does it'll be like smoothish for us this way they're working on. Yeah.
I don't think I caught the question
Yeah,
exactly.
I missed the question. Sorry about that, Shane.
Yeah. Their doubt is like if you are using Flox in our HPC's in the environment, like using in a K8, does Flox will be reliable and scalable. Like the tool will be working fine. They are rolling out the questions over in the HPC environment. Like
So-
does it will does the Fox package has been tested very like working perfectly in the environment? Does it be suitable for that? Does it following any open SSF standards? The questions over in that area, like running the policies.
So to make sure I understand the question, you're saying in something like an HPC environment, high performance computing, or like Kubernetes,
Yeah.
does Flox work? Like, is it scalable? Does it adhere to like some kind of standards, that kind of thing? Is that the question you're asking?
Yeah, sure. That's a question.
Yeah. I don't know how much I can say about that. Like we're going through some compliance stuff now to make sure that, we're adhering to certain best practices. Um, that's about as much as I can say. There are some like Kubernetes things that are kind of we've poked around at. Again, don't know how much I could say about that either. Ron is here. He can tell me what I'm allowed to say.
I think maybe for this, let's start a thread in the general channel on Slack, and that way we can kind of continue to answer it like over time.
It's so sound good. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Shannon, looked like an awesome event.
Yeah.
Sorry for jumping in
Some of the
there.
guys are there really testing the tools over like we are just adding this stuff. Like they are from the other day they started to test the things in the testing environment because some of the guys they felt like it's reducing a pain point over in the SDLC and some certain areas.
Yeah, sounds like something
Yeah.
we'd be interested in. So yeah, start that Slack thread, and happy to chime in. Ernst.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't worked with Flox a lot, or Nix actually. I'm just getting into it. So maybe my question is very basic, but I have this scenario where I'd like to say you're in the root of a mono repo, and you have a whole lot of projects in there. You just want to change the dependencies that you have, right? And then build artifacts for every service, right? So the one might be Go, the other one might be TypeScript, or whatever the case is. So would you be able to like switch profiles and then like build that artifact? Could be a dev artifact that it spits out, and then a production artifact that it spits out for one service, then switch to another one, then switch to another one. My idea is that maybe you don't need this whole CI/CD pipeline thing, or you could have one container that could just build everything in a mono repo. Yeah.
Yeah. So timely question. We just, like Ross mentioned at the beginning, we have this like build support. That was kind of a recent addition. So one way to do that is with Nix. That's that Nix expression build that he mentioned. Another way is in your manifest, there's literally a build section. And so you can define essentially the script for how to build something. So for instance, for a Go program, it's like build.myprogram command equals go build, for instance.
Okay.
And so you can run that build without even actually being activated. So you just type Flox build, and if there's only one build in there, you don't need any arguments. If you want to build a specific thing, you say Flox build my thing. And so there is like some degree that you can kind of script this to do the whole mono repo thing all the way down. You can just, it could really just be like a find command, like find all my directories and run Flox build in it. And so, yeah, there's building blocks there to do exactly what you're asking, but the whole like point me at a mono repo and just hit like a big green button and it builds everything, that doesn't exist today. But yeah, like I said, there's the building blocks are there that you can kind of put together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll
Okay,
also
great.
say that for like a mono repo situation, layering and composition can play a role there. You can have like a common environment at the top level with basic tools that are common throughout all the projects, and then individual environments with for each project with specific dependencies for those. And either through composition or through layering, you can get, those tool sets and manage the common dependencies in one place and the specific dependencies in another. And like Zach said, it can have builds in there beyond development environments to generate artifacts. And that's build and publish, which we're getting into.
Mm. Okay, thank you very much.
Yep. Other questions? What's your favorite color? The answer is purple.
Purple. Yeah. In
Obvious.
case, yeah, our CEO's favorite color is purple. So as our head of marketing, purple has to be part of our brand system. I like purple. Purple is acceptable to me, but purple's the obvious answer. All right, let me do some really quick housekeeping before we adjourn. I want to make sure everybody is, before, Zach, were you raising your hand for something? No.
I was not.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure. Okay, so some quick housekeeping before we adjourn. I want to make sure everybody's aware of the mechanisms for getting help inside of the Flox community. Those mechanisms are Slack, which is where you probably heard about this meeting. So I imagine a lot of you are there. If you're not there, this is probably the most instant way to get in touch with us. We generally will respond pretty quickly. We actually have an on-call rotation and a bat signal and a whole mechanism so that we respond to Slack pretty quickly. It's nobody's job, it's everybody's job, but we still respond to it pretty quickly. So Slack's the best place. Discourse is a place to go and ask for help if you want more of a forum experience, something where it's going to be online forever, because Slack, the history goes away. So Discourse is a more permanent place to ask for help, or if you have something a bit more long form. And then finally, GitHub issues. If you just need a very specific piece of help, definitely feel free to file GitHub issues. So I wanted to review all the different ways to get help. And then before we adjourn, I want to talk about what we're going to dig into next month at the Flox Monthly, and that's a deep dive into generations. So this is that feature where you can roll back to previous versions of Flox environments. And so we're going to talk about how that works, what it does, how you can use it, and what it does underneath the covers, and how it can be used. So that's what we're going to dive into next month. And with that, thank you for joining the first Flox Monthly. We'll see you again in a month. We'll also, between now and then, maybe we'll do a bit of a poll about what the best time is for folks, because this is 8 in the morning for Pacific time in Los Angeles, like LA, California. It's great for me here in Orlando, but it's really late. What time is it in Tokyo? I don't even know.
It's Friday night. It's all right.
Okay. I'm like, in Tokyo, the time's expressed in like letters and symbols. It's not even numbers anymore. Okay, so thank you very much for joining. We will see you at the next one. And have a wonderful weekend, everybody.